Welcome to the Clinician's Corner, the go-to podcast for functional health practitioners who want to deepen their clinical skills and deliver exceptional client results. I'm your host, Margaret Floyd Barry, Master Restorative Health Practitioner and Executive Director of the Institute of Restorative Health. Each week, I interview leading experts to bring you the latest research, case studies, and evidence-based strategies for reversing chronic disease with actionable insights you can implement immediately to elevate your practice and transform how you deliver health. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the RWS Clinician's Corner. Today is going to be an awesome conversation. We have a fan favorite here. We have Shawn Wells for his second appearance on Clinician's Corner. If you don't know Shawn, he is a globally recognized nutritional biochemistry expert with more than 20 years of experience in health, wellness, and product formulation. He has formulated over 1,100 products, and just for reference, the last time we interviewed him, Shawn, it was like 2 or 3 years ago. That was only 700 products, only 700. So this is a busy man. And he holds 40 patents, including Infinity, which is paraxanthine, which is the caffeine metabolite that I have become obsessed with, and BHB salts, among many, many other things. Ultimately, if you are a practitioner and you make supplement recommendations in this space, the chances that you have not recommended a supplement that he has been part of either as a formulator or a creator of a unique ingredient within it is basically slim to none. Shawn has served as chief clinical dietitian, chief science officer, and advisor to multiple supplement companies, facilitating transactions exceeding $500 million. Shawn authored the best-selling book, The Energy Formula. He was featured by USA Today and Forbes, and he shares cutting-edge research on Mind Valley in documentaries and on his website, ShawnWells.com. He speaks all over the world, and it is an honor to have him with us today. Shawn, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me on, Margaret.
So we're talking about something very different than what we normally talk about. We're going to be talking about plant medicine and the role of practitioners in supporting their clients in this journey. And by that, I don't mean them facilitating and guiding a plant medicine journey. You need very specific training for that. But I'm talking about we are kind of in the front lines, right? We are there working with individuals who are often dealing with a lot of things, a lot of trauma, a lot of pieces that come up that are outside just of the physiological component. And plant medicine is something, there's so much cool research coming out of it, about it. The power of this is really undeniable. So being able to have conversations with our clients about it and then support them if they choose to do something like this, how to support them. There's ways, you're the only person I know who is talking about this, ways of supporting people leading into their journey, then as they're having their journey and coming out of that from a diet perspective, from a whole body perspective. So moving it past just the conversation of the psychedelics to that full experience and really supporting that experience. So what I would love to start off with is your personal experience. I mean, here you are, this incredible supplement formulator. What turned you on to plant medicine?
I will say that for 45 years of my life, I believed that these were drugs and bad drugs. And I was frightened by them. I was frightened of MDMA, frightened of psilocybin. Ayahuasca sounded like something that zombie type tribes people do. You know, all of this stuff just seemed frightening to me. Coming from a strong Christian background, coming from my father is a pastor and a Southern Baptist pastor at that. And I grew up in the 80s when drugs are evil, drugs are bad, and that I thought of these things like cocaine or other drugs like heroin, you know, like it was all the same to me. Like this is all escapist, druggy kind of stuff. At the same time, around the time that I was interested potentially in doing this, there's a few things happening. my career was starting to tick upwards in terms of notoriety and speaking. I was getting on stages and getting in circles around people like Keith Norris that runs Paleo Effects. And he told me about all these incredible benefits that he's getting around with psilocybin and ayahuasca. And I was listening to people like Dave Asprey and Tim Ferriss at the time was huge. He's maybe not quite as big now, but at the time he was very big, and I loved his book, Tools of Titans. And these were people that I respected, that I looked up to, and they were either doing psychedelic journeys or they were doing microdosing, and they were getting all of these biohacking benefits for neuroplasticity, for, these kinds of things. And I thought, well, I'm open to this idea. Little did I know that really what was going on inside of me was 40 plus years of insomnia, depression, type A, personality, unrelenting on myself, as far as any mistake was unforgivable, and I would stay in loops and just beat myself up. And I almost committed suicide a number of times. And at this point in my life, I was either going to do it intentionally or unintentionally, just through work. I was working 80 to 100 hours a week. And I had this idea that I remember telling a psychologist about this because I was having surprise trouble with my marriage. And I was like, well, I believe that I'm here to make impact and I need to die in my work. And I believe that idea. And I remember going on vacations and watching other people relax and enjoy themselves and thinking how stupid those people are, that they're not working.
Yeah.
So I wore it like a badge of honor, but all the while I was betraying myself. And I feel like these medicines, you're going to know when the time is right for you. And I feel like I was about to hit rock bottom. And I may have checked out very soon out of my life. And so I had a journey come up, an opportunity come up. It was a day before a big mastermind, one that you're familiar with and has a lot of celebrity type people, maybe even some of the people I mentioned before.
Yeah. And
some of those people were even going to be in the room with me during this experience. And so there was a lot of imposter syndrome walking into that room, maybe. I always would like introduce myself of like, kind of like the thing you read off at the beginning of the top of the show is I would say, hi, I'm Shawn Wells. I've formulated 1,000 products. I have a best-selling book. I'm a biochemist. Here's my resume. Here's why you should love me. Here's why I'm worth knowing and being in your life, because I only have value to you when I show you the things that I've accomplished. And otherwise, I'm positive that I would have zero value to you as a human being. This is what I believed in my heart of hearts, that love was very conditional, and I had to earn conditional love that would be fleeting as soon as my purpose or use was over. And so I went into this psychedelic experience with what became two of my best friends and people that I consider saved my life. Tom, Cole Whitty, were the facilitators. They teach facilitation, and they're actually going to be doing their very last one coming up in August or September, and I'll be at it. And it's in the Austin area, and it's called the Condor Approach. So please, guys, reach out to me. I can get you a good price and all that, but I cry almost every time I bring up their names because I truly believe I would not be here without them. And they are so intelligent, so compassionate, so well experienced in this facilitation and certainly integration. But I ended up going very deep. Others were in this experience the day before New Year's Eve, going lighter, maybe like 1 gram, 2 grams. I ended up going into what was about 5 grams. And I had an absolute mind-blowing experience. And I literally, kind of like the emoji, I was just like all night, like, whoa. And, I saw the things moving and I had these epiphanies because as I was laying there in this cuddle puddle on the floor and people were being kind to me, watching out for me, holding space for me, sitting by me, that didn't know me, didn't know my accomplishments, that were way more accomplished than me, way more. And I'm like, the whole time, I'm like, why are they here? I have no value to them. And it just, I kept wrestling with it. It's like, I appreciate they're here. Wow, they're so kind. They're like, petting me or grabbing me some fruit or helping me to the bathroom or, just listening to me or, just sitting by me and just having that maternal energy that like, oh, you're safe. And that allowed me to lean in a lot more. It's all about your nervous system. This is like set and setting, and I could talk for an hour just on the autonomic nervous system. And when you feel safe, you can go much deeper, irrespective of dose. You can overwhelm the dose with your central nervous system and the autonomic nervous system in general, just by being sympathetic and, having a vigilance. You can have dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol. You can just overwhelm the whole thing. This is just if you were drunk and, someone split their head and there's blood everywhere, you'd be like, boom, you'd be awake and alert. This cocktail comes in. It's very much the same thing in psychedelic experiences, that the more you can get into parasympathetic, that's why they might give MDA, MDMA. They might do breath work. They might do intention setting. They might do trauma release, stretching, and all these kinds of things to kind of get you into a relaxed parasympathetic state so that now your body's allowing this experience and allowing you to explore. I liken it to a deep sea diver or like an astronaut out in space with the tether, the air supply, and you can kind of go deeper into space, into the inky black sea, if you feel safe. And now you're free to explore maybe your shadow and not just be playful, but really do some deeper work around trauma. And I could get into something I just did recently on, if you think that's a hero's dose, I about 3x that dose. And I worked through some generational trauma, and I thought that was all BS up until 2 weeks ago. But that's a whole different discussion. But this night, this night, I ended up realizing that these people were around me because I could be loved. Up until this point, up until 45 years of life, I believed I could not be loved, that I was not worthy of love, that I could have fleeting love or adoration or adulation or praise for the things I accomplished, but that I, Shawn Wells, as a human being, could not walk up into a room without explaining my value and just be loved. And I realized that I could just be loved and have love. And that, it may sound obvious. And if someone said it to me, I would have said, oh yeah, okay. Cerebrally, I would have, agreed. There's logic there, but it wasn't in my heart. And once your heart shifts and that becomes something you believe, my whole life shifted. Like everything shifted. Purpose came in, possibility came in, wealth, abundance, love, life, the whole thing like just came in and changed. Everything changed. I still continue to grow in my career, but not with like clawing and scraping and
right.
Cutting my belly up on glass anymore. It was through manifestation, through great relationships, through just joy that it just flowed in. And that was a game changer. And then I continued to do journeys probably on average, like once a month for the next maybe year and a half, doing some deeper work. And that led me to making a difficult decision, but a decision I needed to make around a very platonic marriage I was in. She was a great person, but it was a very platonic marriage. And I needed to make that decision on leaving that situation in as good a way as possible, preserving that relationship and being as kind as possible, and going to the next phase of my life where there was an opportunity for a deeper love.
To bring this to physiological as well, I mean, you mentioned at the front end, the insomnia, the stress, the working so crazy. Like basically, if you weren't to kill yourself intentionally, it was going to be unintentionally through the way that you were living. Yeah. How did that change for you after the fact?
Dramatically.
Yeah.
One, I found purpose in this like soul fam that I was in, like when I would be doing these journeys every month or so, like not only Tom and Cole, but like also like the people that were going, like at the time, it was like literally the New Year's Eve heading into COVID, heading into Black Lives Matter, heading into a whirlwind of politicians and divisiveness. And the whole world seemed like it was splitting apart while I was doing the work. And I met people that were diving in just like me, that were newly experiencing psychedelics, that were working through trauma, that once you walk through these thresholds with other people, the bonds you have with them is very deep. You hear about trauma bonds, but this is something different because it's releasing trauma bonds, and it's very deep work. And even the people you consider the closest people in your life that you've known your entire life, brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, spouses, have never seen this side of you, the raw. And when you share the raw with other people and see them own the idea that they are gay, own the idea that it's time to be divorced or lean into that marriage, own the idea that I'm not happy at my job, I hate it, and I want to become a musician, or I want to move to this other state that's just been in my heart for the last 15 years and I haven't acknowledged it. Or I used to be a great artist, but I let it go. And, or I haven't talked to my son in 10 years. And I hate that. And or even body issues. I've been in the room with people that were morbidly obese and had extreme body shame and were sobbing, but like we praised them, loved on them, gave them what they felt like they were denied their entire life, and watched them emotionally transform, then physically transform. And these kinds of experiences are just incredible because not only are you a part of it and helping and making impact at the deepest level, but you are witnessing change. And this is the idea, like psychologically, you probably heard about Roger Bannister, like when he broke the 4-minute mile, that all of a sudden there was like a flood of people that broke the 4-minute mile. It was considered impossible. And then he did it. And then about 20 other people did it, because now it was possible. And once you see, your brain sees that it's possible, that's when everything shifts. And when I've seen people do the most difficult things, that's when everything shifted. So for me, like, that was very profound.
For folks who are listening, and thinking about this from that, as a practitioner perspective, you mentioned at the front end, this is a highly personal decision. And like, when you're called, you're called. Do you think there is an appropriate moment to bring this into a conversation as a clinician working with a client, when you have that relationship where they, often, we always, yes, we're talking about, digestive issues and your poop and like all of these different things, but very quickly those relationships can become actually, they share an incredible amount of detail. And often as clinicians, we can become aware that there's a lot more going on here than just the physiology. And there's a lot of different modalities that we can direct people to. In my personal experience, one of the benefits of this is it's such a fast track. And it's also not for everyone. I mean, in my experiences, and I've not had as many as you have, the way that I have experienced it is it almost feels like it's been sort of psychic surgery, like things that were major triggers, things that were blocking me professionally, physically, emotionally in relationships. They were just gone, and it wasn't like this lasted a couple of days. It was like, that was the old me, and that's just not part of my operating system anymore. And that is profound. And so when we are, as clinicians, working with our clients, do you feel that there is a moment where it is appropriate to bring this up? And do you have any recommendations on both how to make these kinds of recommendations and then how to find resources to support these folks? Because that is something that, we want to be really careful. We're not just sending them to any old, backyard. I mean, when I lived in LA, it was like every other person was a shaman doing ayahuasca ceremonies in their backyard. That's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah. And I don't like that, like, cultural appropriation. I'm not going to go all PC with it, and I'm not going to get into like woke whatever, but when it comes to something, this is a whole other discussion, but like ayahuasca and 5-MeO/Bufo, those are like very deep spiritual experiences that, in my experience, I would prefer to leave with people that walk in that realm. There is a need for an emotional and spiritual cleanliness and purpose for your facilitators when they're walking into that space with you. And it's one thing to do 2.5 grams of mushrooms with a facilitator, but it's a whole other thing to do some of these other medicines. And people that are not prepared in terms of what might happen, or that are not prepared internally, I don't feel like should be in those spaces. That's like that's pro level, if you will. And even people like Todd and Cole do not step into those spaces. They guide people with legitimate shamans that are from tribes in Peru. And I've been through those experiences where the entire family was holding space. And most of their life is in the 5D, if you will.
Right.
So I'll just put that out there as a disclaimer. This is very different than doing some MDMA or ketamine or, those kinds of things. So
can you actually make that distinction just so that people are really clear? So, sort of starting points, that it's okay to have a facilitator here, let's just say, or in the, in the United States. It doesn't have those, that deep, like there are grades almost, right? Like you've got sort of levels of things. Can you kind of, I know this isn't like a perfect science or anything like that, but sort of like starter, middle, more advanced, just to like, for those who are new to this world, so that if somebody also comes to them and asks them about it, they have a little bit of a sense.
Yeah, I think for someone that has fear of tribes and woo and dark energies and all, whatever it is, and maybe they have like a lot of fixed thinking around religion, or whether these are drugs, or maybe it's best that they explore ketamine in a clinical environment,
right,
and just start walking through that kind of space where there's doctors and nurses or anesthetists. They have an IV set up and it's metered, and you're there for an hour and they're right there at your beck and call, and it might take several sessions and to work through some things, but just that dissociation can help when you pull yourself outside of your problems, outside of your traumas. Sometimes just looking from the outside in. I actually used to do an experience in NLP work where you do like kind of, you experience something, like you say everything you need to say to a person that you have trouble with, then you put yourself in their shoes and say something to you, then you take this third person perspective and look at the two of you and just being dissociated out of your own problems. And quite often that is the victim space that we're in and we can't get out of, can be very powerful. Some of these other medicines work on a different level, a deeper level. But MDMA is a heart opener. You feel loving, you feel vulnerable, and just that can be powerful. Sometimes our guard is up, gosh, what is it? I'm blanking. That guard, I'm not thinking of the correct word for it. There's a term for it. I'm blanking on it, but there's a scientific term for it.
Okay.
But having your walls up is a barrier, obviously, to clear communication and your needs and setting expectations. There's fears that you have, and you don't want to actually be heard, but in a way you're dying to be heard. And MDMA can bridge that gap like almost nothing else. It was actually first used with couples therapy. And it is very powerful for that. So those are two medicines that are very easy to work with and feel the power of and the benefits of. And then a lighter dose psilocybin, I do believe, especially like a golden teacher strain of there's kind of gradations of strains.
Yeah. Maybe
on one end you have something like I just did a few weeks ago called Enigma that is very, very powerful. And, penis envy is something that's kind of, maybe like middle, more towards powerful. And then golden teacher is very gentle. Yeah. And that's where a lot of people start. That's what a lot of people use as microdoses. In doing something like 2 to 2.5 grams is a great place to potentially journey. Maybe it's with an MDA or MDMA as a heart opener. And another medicine called Wachuma, also called San Pedro, is often used the day following, where you can really ground the nervous system and integrate that day after, kind of feel safe to just think about the epiphanies you've had, and really integrate those, start that integration process. Wachuma is not very psychedelic, but it does contain mescaline as one of the actives, and it seems to just bend time and just relax the nervous system. It just kind of allows you to breathe and have ease. So those would be places that might be easier places to start. I do think things like 5-MeO, ibogaine, ayahuasca, those are more like pro level. And there's certainly, you need the right people guiding you in those spaces, and then you most certainly need people helping you integrate. There is a very popular ayahuasca retreat space that does a very poor job at integration and holding space for 120 people in one room.
Oh.
And I won't say the name of that place, but it's not ideal. That is not what I would do. It's very commercialized. That is not the path I would go down.
How do people find the practitioners who are doing really good work in this area? So you mentioned your friends at the opening, the Condor approach. Do they, for example, have a facilitator listing? Are there,
They do.
People are looking for this,
that would be where I would go to, because
excellent.
They've been trained by the best of the best, and they also know when someone else is much better at that medicine than them. Or here's what's important too. Speaking of set and setting, you can have someone maybe like me that I've done the work now. I feel like I'm very safe, and it took a lot of work for me to release a lot of my trauma, my inner demons, to not bring those energies into these spaces.
Right.
That I feel like I'm very clean in my energy now. And that took a lot of work. And I couldn't even say that maybe a couple of years ago. But just because I'm that, and maybe a lot of people might like me as a facilitator, doesn't mean I'm the right facilitator for X person. Maybe someone who's had sexual trauma and just being with a man feels dangerous in this environment. That's when they should be with maternal energy, a woman, and then maybe eventually it's a couple, something like where, it's just not right. Or maybe it's, a young Black man that's been through a lot of things, and I'm not going to be the right energy for this man that's been through certain traumas. Maybe as a older white male, I'm going to make him feel unsafe. It has nothing to do with me being right or wrong. It's just who's the right person at this time for that person. And so that's something that you need to be mindful of as well in these environments. And so like with the Condor approach, they have people that, are gay, white, trans, Black, young, old, like living all over the country, living all over the world, that are trained in this medicine, that medicine, that are Christian, that are Muslim, that are, whatever it is. Like there's people that they'll find the right person for you, and this community knows that, and they take pride in that. They're not going to just say, oh yeah, I'm the right person, don't worry about it. There's no, like, the top thing that Tom Cole would teach is autonomy and sovereignty. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to gaslight you into believing that you don't have your sovereignty or autonomy in this case. And they're not going to throw around the word like guru, like where I know better than you. No, you know best. You know best. You need to trust yourself. And that's often one of the biggest lessons that comes through in this experience is just that.
Let's talk about preparing the body for this experience. With something like ayahuasca, there is a very specific diet that's recommended leading up to it. But in the absence of that, I'm not aware, at least, of any of the other modalities of there being kind of thought and consideration into how to be preparing the body leading in from a dietary perspective. And then how to support the body, nutritionally. Are there certain compounds that can get you more ready for it, that can support without taking away from the journey, but can support it, and then can support both integration and if there's any, it's a lot that happens on a physiological and an emotional level. And so are there strategies that we can use to kind of support that, not to override it, not to dull it, but to support it?
Yeah, a lot of like the Peruvians and Amazonians believe in the dieta, the diet going in, which isn't just a physical food diet, but also like a mental diet, like that they want you, especially going into ayahuasca experiences, to be free from things that are addictive, or maybe even not only things like porn, but they may ask you to forego sex for X amount of days. They also may ask you over the last couple of days to be fasting. It varies from like tribe to tribe, but what I've found is there's, I think, legitimacy on this idea of fasting going into a psychedelic experience, because it's going to raise plasma ketone levels like BHB. And what we found is BHB can heal the brain on a number of levels. One, as an energetic substrate. Two, reducing neuroinflammation. Three, it's been studied with things like traumatic brain injury. So there are improving neuroplasticity. So I do believe that this idea of purging and kind of cleansing not only psychologically makes sense, but has some reason in terms of physiology and healing the brain and the body as well. And so I've leaned into that idea with some of my supplement protocols, where I recommend things like dihydroberberine or exogenous ketones or MCTs or a ketogenic diet or glycogen depletive exercise heading into these experiences. You have to do what's best for you. I don't want you to like feeling overwhelmed, or some women in particular, fasting, especially extended fasting, doesn't work great.
Right.
So maybe intermittent fasting is ideal. Eating kind of lighter foods seems to be ideal. It's certainly hard to eat maybe like traditional ketogenic foods, like coming out of a journey, I've found, because of you just want something light, like fruit, like juice, like soup or something like that. Like you're just not really in a place to have heavier, higher fat kind of foods. But I do think there's logic there on the ketogenic side. I also think that priming the body with electrolytes, with hydration, with relaxing the nervous system through adaptogens, things like L-theanine, methylated B vitamins, could be ideal, because certainly magnesium at night and things like that. But I like the adaptogens quite a bit, like the functional mushrooms, rhodiola, ashwagandha, things like that. As I was stating, I believe the nervous system is key to this whole thing. And a lot of times the journey starts when you commit to it.
Yeah.
And you'll find, I've seen this 100 times, like where the stuff starts coming up from unconscious to subconscious to conscious mind as that journey is committed to, because now you're like, oh, shit, this is real. Like people are going to see me. Oh my gosh. And, like what's going to happen? Like, how is my life going to change? Like, so there's things that start coming up and start becoming real that you've kind of suppressed and hidden away. And here it is. So being kind to yourself in this process, taking time to not be as driven and schedule packed and overwhelmed going into a journey, and then most certainly heading out of the journey, allowing yourself time and space to breathe, to integrate. I would encourage that 2 or 3 days after your journey are just 100% free for you to sleep, to journal, to think, to relax, to get self-care. And if you could do a week, that would be awesome. But, try and make it as relaxed as possible. And I would encourage even the day after a journey to not jump onto a plane, into a car and travel. Like, just that kind of stuff can feel very abrupt energetically. Take time to just relax in a space. I also like not being in your own home for these experiences where you're kind of tethered to certain energies, certain responsibilities. Being in a different place, even if you're saying like, I can't travel far, rent an Airbnb in your town and work with someone to do that, and have someone cook, at this experience or whatever you need. Just be kind to yourself and know that these kinds of experiences can have profound effects beyond years of therapy, years of medications, years of working out or reading books. Like, you can do more in one day, with these experiences quite often.
You talked, that was really helpful in terms of that window of time afterwards. I think that's one of the things that I both personally experienced and seen a lot, is people do it maybe like on a weekend and they're back into their normal life on a Monday. And that's a very short time to try to process all of that. Leading into it, do you feel like there's that same buffer of time needed for, the way I think of it as a nutrition professional, I think, well, the more robust and healthy an individual is going into it, the better, because they're going to be able to sort of handle things more. Of course, the more that they aren't on some kind of crazy blood sugar roller coaster, the better. So ideally, all this stuff has been taken care of before. But even just thinking about that window that's a little bit even deeper in terms of protective around, like really eating a little bit lighter, getting those blood sugar spikes out of the equation, getting your ketones up. How much time is that? 2 to 3 days? Is that a week? Is that 2 weeks? Is that 2 months?
Obviously, it's going to differ for everyone. And, I feel ready to kind of jump into a journey on a whim at this point. But I think early on, and especially if you have clearly significant unresolved trauma, and you also are leading a very busy life, and maybe if you are still living around your source of the trauma, let's say in an abusive relationship, I think it's that those are the times, and really you want to be kind to yourself and take space away from that, because it's going to be hard to lean into those experiences. I've seen it several times with people going into journeys that just said, "Oh, this isn't working," because their nervous system was just too jacked up to even get there, and they just overpowered it.
You talked through some great protocols in terms of leading and supporting that nervous system regulation, getting those ketones up. Anything else going in? And then I want to talk about what to do on the other side. Oh, and the hydration is such an important piece, going in really, really well hydrated and with those electrolytes in.
Yeah, the hydration, the B vitamins, maybe L-theanine could be good even during. like in a water bottle of some kind.
Yeah.
Certainly after, like, things like magnesium are really important, and hydration continues to be important the days following up. Not only a hydrated body, but a hydrated brain just functions better. And a lot of this is about new neural pathways, neurogenesis, synaptogenesis, the brain kind of rewriting its code. As you mentioned, it's like kind of going into your operating system and surgically changing the operating system. And default mode network was what I could not think of before, and now I just thought of. So, that default mode network is kind of what your operating system's working from. And not only is that from the lessons you've learned, the good ones, but maybe stories you've told yourself that aren't true, generational trauma, which is stored in your DNA, period, the end. This is scientific fact. I can show you many studies that generationally, like a trauma that happened 3 generations back, is stored in that DNA, and it changes your behavior. And this makes sense in evolutionary functionality, right? If you think about there was near drowning in multiple generations, like that, it would make sense to build in that fear into you.
Yeah.
And I mean, for anyone that thinks that's not true, like, you can look at like ants and bees that know exactly what to do the second they're born, or a baby Joey that travels from its mother's vagina to the pouch blind. Animals know what to do the second they come into the world.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? That comes from generational knowledge that's programmed in. Yeah. And so, when you're thinking about default mode network and the operating system, and in psychedelics, the default mode network is down. Neuroplasticity is heightened dramatically. Your neurotransmitters holistically, globally, are up, all of them. The serotonin theory around depression is very flawed. It's really holistic neurotransmitters that are depressed when you are depressed. And so they're turning them all up, and neuroplasticity is up and default mode networks down. And that allows you to make changes when you can be in that environment in a way that is just almost impossible through just psychotherapy. Now, ideally, you can combine the two and have that guidance and integration through that experience. And that would be the most ideal. And there's been tons of studies with mushrooms, with MDMA, where there was psychotherapy. And there is, in any given study, when I talk about DMT, ketamine, LSD, psilocybin, MDMA, I can show you in almost every clinical study, there's about a 50 to 80% cure rate.
Which is insane.
Of
it doesn't happen in anything else.
Of depression, of suicidal ideology, of all these different things, of clinical anxiety. Like, there's nothing like that, nothing. And that may happen over, some of the studies, it's as much as 12 months, and there may be like 3 different therapies that are involved with that. But with the psychedelic and the psychotherapy, there is a profound impact for real change. That's just like, literally, in so many of these studies, they no longer met the clinical definition for these things.
Right.
And
is there anything else that can claim that? I mean, there's not a single therapy medication.
And here's the thing, with meta-analysis done in 2017 and 2022 on SSRIs, meta-analysis looking at all the studies, 2017, 2022. These are like the most respected journals like GMO, they found at best the data was equivocal. And they said at worst, we may be doing more harm than good.
Yeah.
The serotonin theory is deeply flawed. I'm not saying serotonin doesn't have an impact and doesn't affect your kind of well-being or happiness. But when you affect a receptor, you get the short-term effect of blocking that receptor and kind of increasing the amount of serotonin. But it has almost like endocrine cascade. There's a neurotransmitter cascade that they all affect each other. There's this amazing interplay of your hormones, of your neurotransmitters, of signaling through peptides in the body that's happening. And you can't just there's so many medicines that work like this, where it's like, we're going to block this enzyme. And it's like, it'll work for like a week or two.
Yeah.
When you talk about like allopathic medicine, it'll work for a couple weeks. But over time, your body, through homeostasis, is going to find a way like over, around, and through. Yeah. And you really need to get to the root of that problem and heal at the root of that problem. And typically, especially if you kind of look at the work of Joe Dispenza or Dr. Bruce Lipton, this is unresolved trauma that could be at the root of so much of this disease that people are experiencing.
I want to go back to, we were talking about the neuroplasticity that just gets so opened up. This is, and I described it as psychic surgery. How are there things that we can do to really support? Because in that moment, right? Like that's why the integration and the support post journey from a psychological perspective. And like, if you just do the journey and then go about your business, I think the results of that are still profound, but perhaps not as lasting. But really being able to integrate, being able to anchor these things. Are there nutrients and supplements that we can be bringing in at that point to physiologically also support and complement, not replace, but complement that work that we're doing, with a, psychotherapist or what have you?
Yes.
Whoever's guiding that integration.
100%. But I will also say that doing a few journeys where you don't do the work, don't do the follow-up integration, may be okay, where you kind of get used to the medicine, get used to the setting, and then you say, okay, like now I've seen the power, I feel safe, like I'm going to really dive in. Okay. But if you're someone who consistently seeks out these big experiences, but doesn't do the work behind it, I would actually say that could do more harm than good, because you're now very clear on what needs to change and not changing it. Yeah. It's no longer suppressed or hidden away in subconscious or unconscious. It's right in front of your face. And now you're not living in your truth. And that cognitive dissonance will play out. It's going to play out and be serious. So this isn't about just big experiences. It's about doing the work behind it. But when it comes to the nutrients that I would look to, I look to heighten neuroplasticity coming out of the experience to maximize the ability to make those lasting changes when you're doing that work in the following weeks. So some of what that could look like is something like 7,8-dihydroxyflavone, 7,8-DHF. Another compound, just to add more letters and numbers for you, that's a metabolite, is known as 4-dimethylamino 7,8-dihydroxyflavone. So it's 4-DMA 7,8-DHF. Mm-hmm. And that may be more powerful still, but I've been exploring combining the two. And really there's nothing that is like this destroys lion's mane. Like this is well beyond that. So
this is supporting Plasticity, very specifically.
Yes. So BDNF, NGF, mTOR. So looking at these compounds could be helpful in that facilitated, integrative state post-journey. Also, just doing microdoses of the medicine you used. Yeah. If you did the work on LSD, ketamine, MDMA, ayahuasca, certainly psilocybin, doing microdoses can help put you in a space that reminds your body of where you were and the work you were doing and the epiphanies you had. So if you were doing psilocybin, then getting that exact strain could be even more powerful. This is actually something I've trademarked, an idea called echo dosing, like where you, let's say if you had a ceremonial cacao, you had MDA, you had golden teacher, psilocybin, that having microdoses of those things in the following weeks could be very powerful to remind your body. So this is the idea that, yes, neuroplasticity is helpful, but maybe the exact thing is even more powerful. So if I was to play the music that you were listening to during your journey, powerful. If I play that exact song when you had your epiphany,
right,
10x. This is the same idea.
Love it.
And if there's a smell, like let's say someone used sage or agua de Florida or something like that, like during your journey, and you have your epiphany. I mean, like some smell can be very powerful. So I've really thought through the idea of senses playing out, heightening that remembrance in the body of that was what I experienced. That was what I know I needed. That was the great remembering or my epiphany or my aha to say, that's what I need to do. And I'm locked on it and I'm going to do it. So that can be very important. And another thing I played with is this idea of my stack post journey, bringing in microdoses of those during your journey could actually create this echo dose. So it's an idea I played with. Some people have worked with it and found very profound results with it, but I don't have a study for it. It's just a concept I've worked on.
Can you share just one quick clarification on microdosing, because people talk a lot about microdosing, and I know that, you even just hear it just in pop culture, people sort of like talking about microdosing, making sort of the assumption everyone's walking around just a little high. And that's really not what we're talking about here, right? So can you make, like, even explaining like using psilocybin as an example, you gave like 2 to 2.5 grams as, kind of a gentler starting dose. When we're talking about microdosing, we're not talking 1 gram. Like, can you give us some specifics so people can understand like how micro we're talking? And is this something that people are you walking around high?
No. It's supposed to be subperceptual. The whole idea of microdose is that you can't even perceive its action acutely, that it's doing some things in your body, especially with continued use of, like, you could use the Paul Stamets protocol or other protocols like Third Wave, which is a great site for information on psychedelics, very scientific site. Doing these doses are truly not supposed to be felt. If you are feeling that, then that's getting into what I would call a mini dose, right? Where things are getting brighter and, more sparkly, and you're a little bit more creative, and that's cool. If you're feeling it, that's cool. That's what you want to do and you feel safe with it, then that might be in the kind of 200, 300, 400, 500 range, something like that. But a microdose tends to be like 75 to 150 milligrams, depending on the kind of potency of the strain. So if you were using something like Enigma, it probably would be more like 50 to 75 milligrams, like very small. If you were using Golden Teacher, then maybe it's, that 150, but it doesn't really get beyond that dose. So hopefully that clarifies that.
Okay. And I interrupted you. You're about to say something more about the follow-up. So I don't want to lose whatever you were thinking about.
No. So the other compounds that I would get into are certainly, making sure that you're eating healthy, multivitamin with methylated Bs, with active organic minerals, making sure maybe you're kind of keeping ketones elevated again. So things like dihydroberberine or exogenous ketones or MCTs could be good. Keeping the adaptogens in the mix to kind of help with resilience cognitively and physically. Maybe this would be a good time for things that work on a gut level as well. So pro, postbiotics could be ideal at this point, because I've found that your epigenetic code, speaking of, the operating system, the epigenetics are shifting very quickly. Your physiology can shift very dramatically from these experiences. So giving it the nutrients it needs is very ideal. And certainly making sure you're getting sleep, rest, relaxation is ideal as well. And, if you can tap into peptides, that could be helpful as well. Things like BPC 157, TB 500, things on the cognitive level like Selenx, Samax, Dihexa could be very powerful as well. And if you can do exosomes, PRP, stem cells, these kinds of V cells during an experience, you're talking about your body is primed and physioplastic.
Right.
And your nervous system is allowing these nutrients to be used. This is one of the things I've really been exploring too, is with nutrients, I believe most people aren't getting nearly the benefit because they're not priming themselves for them by getting into a parasympathetic state, taken up another level by getting into a meditative or manifestative state, where you're priming your brain and body for the nutrients. Dear Lord, thank you for this food and the nutrients we are about to receive. Amen. I'm in coherence with my family. I'm in coherence with my body. I'm in a parasympathetic state. I primed my brain and body for what it is that's about to happen from this food and the value of this food. I have gratitude. That shifts your whole physiology.
Beautiful.
And most people do not acknowledge this at all. And so when you're taking supplements, when you're taking food, when you're doing a workout, think about saying to yourself with intention what the value is and what you're about to receive, so that you can receive it and shift your nervous system. So I feel like that has a pretty profound impact that I don't feel like anyone talks about. And I don't know anyone in supplements that's ever talked about that, even though hopefully that makes a lot of sense when you hear it.
I think that is like the proverbial money shot. Like that is like gold for any context. What you have just shared there, I think that is, I'm getting chills just listening to you say that, because we rush through our things and we take the supplements because we have to take them, and we, let alone, talking completely outside of, honestly, I feel like in a medicine ceremony, one of the powers of it is that we take so much intention and care to create this what do you call it, the space and setting, like the physical space. We're so intentional about what we're trying to get out of it. Imagine bringing that same level of intention to your lunch, to the supplements that you take to help you sleep at night. I mean, I think that is one of the most profound things that's been said on this podcast. Thank you.
Well, thank you. The flip side of this is true too. Let me give you an example. Like, if you were eating your salad and you think this, it's a grilled chicken salad and it's got olive oil on it, it's got vegetables and it's fresh and it's organic, but every day you're eating it in traffic. Yeah. And you're like swearing at and you're listening to music and what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And if I was to give you McDonald's, but you were to pray first, and you were in a very relaxed state, and you were surrounded by beautiful people, you felt supported and nurtured, you felt calm and relaxed. It's an NLP anchoring that is taking place, a psychosomatic anchoring that's taking place, where these things become hardwired over time, where the second I eat lettuce or chicken or whatever, I think stress. Or the second I eat that McDonald's, I think relaxation. Now, I'm not saying inherently that the McDonald's is healthy or that this, other salad is unhealthy, but these things can become hardwired into them. And it becomes like Pavlov's dogs for you, like very Pavlovian, where it's hardwired over time. So you have to think about the environment you're in, the intentions you're setting around all the things that you're doing. And that's why intention setting is really important going into journeys. And when you work with facilitators, they do a lot of work going into the journey. Like Ton Cole would do 2 hours worth of a phone call before you even come to the experience. Yeah. Understanding your needs, your medical history, like your traumas, like, what's the right way to connect with you, and what's the proper way to like have you feel as safe as possible, or whether they're even the right people or not. All of that's important.
There's a question here in the chat I want to make sure we get to. What is the purpose of elevating ketones in this circumstance?
Yeah, that goes back to the idea that I was talking about, where ketones, BHB, is a substrate for energy. In particular, neurons are highly energy dependent, just like myocardial tissue, or brown adipose tissue, or things that have like a lot of mitochondria. Neurons have a lot of mitochondria and require a lot of energy.
The Clinician's Corner podcast is sponsored by the Institute of Restorative Health, the premier clinical training program for health practitioners who want to learn how to finally get to the root source of their clients' health concerns and help them reverse complex health challenges and chronic illness. You can't afford to keep guessing. Your clients can't afford it either. Today's clients are sicker than ever before. Their health histories are more complex than ever, and you simply can't deliver results they need or build the practice you desire without the right clinical skills. Enter the Institute of Restorative Health. Our clinically proven, systematic approach to restoring balance within the body has helped thousands of practitioners transform their clients' lives, grow their business, and change the way health is delivered. Study with us to develop and master the clinical skills and confidence you need to help your clients feel better, faster. Learn how to work with advanced lab testing to identify imbalances, craft custom targeted protocols that truly resolve your clients' health issues, and deliver consistently life-changing results. Visit instituteofrestorativehealth.com to apply today and secure your spot.
So one, you may have mitochondrial dysfunction neurologically. A lot of people are insulin resistant, which is like type 3 diabetes, which is Alzheimer's. But two, the experience itself requires a lot of mental deep work. So you need the substrate. Beyond that, we talked about that there's signaling that's happening with the inflammasome and things like IL-6 and all these CRP, all these inflammatory markers that are modulated by BHB. Mm-hmm. We also have seen that neuroplasticity is affected by BHB, and then we've seen things like traumatic brain injury affected by BHB, and we've seen areas of trauma in the brain like literally not show up, not light up in depression. Mm-hmm. And it can be turned on in psychedelics, and potentially maybe more so with the BHB. So there is, I feel like just a synergy that can happen by enhancing a psychedelic's impact physiologically with elevated ketones.
That makes a lot of sense. I have so many questions that we didn't even get to. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. I'm aware of time. Shawn, to wrap up, what would be your words of advice to the practitioners here on this call or listening to the recording when they're thinking about this? What would be kind of your last words on this?
I think it's very important before you guide someone down a path that you yourself need to do the work. And I don't like the idea of someone telling someone about a certain medicine that hasn't done it. That's just where I'm coming from on that. So I'll put that out there first and foremost. Secondly, I know there is risk for a healthcare practitioner to, one, talk about it, and then if they have done that work, that could be held against them. Two, to talk about it with their client, their patient, can be scary because now there could be risk inherent to that. And if someone has something not ideal happen, they could blame you. So this is not an easy path to head down, but I do feel like if you are in this business to make impact in human lives, there's potentially no more impactful way than this. So I don't have an easy answer at this time, but I would encourage educated healthcare practitioners to at least know these substances, know what it's like to do them safely, and then know maybe the right direction to point people at least. And those would be things like third wave, like Condor approach, things like that.
Thank you so much, Shawn. Are there, for people who want to stay connected with you, where's the best place for them to find? We've got ShawnWells.com for your website. I don't know how much you go into this topic there, but I know you've talked about this from stages, so It's not a secret.
Yeah, it's tough because Google and Meta seem to kind of really hurt me when I share this kind of stuff. But yeah. I found that obviously on stage I can say what I want, and LinkedIn seems to be a good place for me to do these things. So it hasn't hurt an algorithm, and it seems like it's a good place to talk about those things. But yeah, at Shawn Wells, SHAWN on most platforms, ShawnWells.com, SHAWN. I have tons of guides of supplement stacks, biohacking, all the things. All of it's free. I do have the Energy Formula book that's on Amazon and hardcover, softcover, Audible, ebook. And then I just released a chorus for it, a video chorus as well. So, and then on Mindvalley, I have a chorus on supplements as well. So if you're on the Mindvalley platform, so those are some places that you can find my work. And then of course, feel free to DM me.
Thank you for the incredibly important work that you're doing. And for those of you who aren't yet following Shawn or digging into his work, go check it out. It is it is just like the most reputable in the business and super accessible. He really balances those pieces beautifully. Thank you so much, Shawn.
Thank you.